You don't have Instagram, you're not on TikTok, maybe you deleted everything years ago, or maybe you never started in the first place. And every time someone finds out, they look at you like you just said something strange, like you're missing something obvious, like you need to be explained. But here's what nobody is saying out loud. The people who quietly stepped away from social media or never joined at all are not the ones who couldn't keep up. In this video, you're going to find out what psychology actually says about who these people are, what drives them, and the one thing about them that most people completely misread. Most people assume you quit because you couldn't handle the noise, or that you're antisocial, or that something about you just doesn't fit in the modern world. Society has a quiet story about you, that you're either anxious, behind, or a little odd. But that story has it completely backwards. Researchers who study digital behavior have found something that should make you pause. The decision to stay off social media is rarely random. It follows a pattern, a very specific psychological pattern. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A study published in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that limiting social media use to just 30 minutes a day significantly reduced loneliness and depression in college students. But the more interesting finding wasn't about the people who limited their use, it was about the ones who had already left or never engaged at all. Those individuals showed consistently higher scores on something called self-determined motivation. They were doing things in their lives because they genuinely wanted to, not because an audience was watching. So here's the question worth sitting with. What does a person have to understand about themselves, maybe earlier than most, to make that kind of choice? Think about where the habit of performing for approval starts. For most people, it starts very young. You learn that being seen, being liked, validated, acknowledged, felt like safety. And social media, when it arrived, became the most efficient machine ever built for delivering that feeling. But some people, somewhere along the way, developed a different relationship with their own sense of self. Not colder, not better, just more internal. Psychologists call this having a strong internal locus of control, a deep sense that your value doesn't depend on what others register about you. And here's where it gets interesting. Because this trait doesn't come from arrogance. It very often comes from having experienced exactly what external validation doesn't give you, and deciding, sometimes quietly, sometimes painfully, that the chase wasn't worth it. Now, there's a version of this that sounds simple. Like people who avoid social media are just healthier, more enlightened, and that's the whole story. But that's not the whole story. Research from the American Psychological Association also shows that some people disengage from social media not out of strength, but out of avoidance. There's a difference between someone who leaves because they know who they are and someone who leaves because the comparison hurt too much to keep watching. Both look identical from the outside, but on the inside, they're very different. The psychological pattern that actually predicts long-term well-being isn't about whether someone uses social media, it's about why they made the choice they made. And this is the open loop from the beginning. The pattern researchers keep finding again and again. People who leave or avoid social media for reasons rooted in self-clarity, knowing their own values, their own time, their own attention, show lower rates of anxiety and higher reported life satisfaction over time. Not because social media is evil, but because intentional living, in any form, tends to compound. So let's reframe the whole thing. You are never behind. You are never odd. You are never broken for not wanting to perform your life in real time for an audience that changes every 6 months. The world built a system that rewards constant visibility, and you decided, consciously or not, that visibility wasn't the same as meaning. That's not a deficiency. That's a distinction most people spend decades trying to learn. Here's what I want to ask you directly. When you made the decision to stay off social media, or when you think about why you've stayed, was it because something felt wrong about the whole system, or was it because something already felt right about how you were living without it? Drop your answer in the comments, because I genuinely want to know if any part of this video felt like permission to stop explaining yourself, permission to stop shrinking the choice you made into something more socially acceptable. Good. That was the point. But here is the thing I saved for last, the thing most videos won't tell you. The research doesn't just show that people who opt out of social media tend to be more self-directed. It shows something deeper. These individuals, on average, report a stronger sense of narrative identity, meaning they experience their own life as a coherent story with direction and meaning rather than a series of disconnected moments performed for others. In other words, when you stop broadcasting your life, you start living it like it belongs to you. That's not a small thing. That might be everything.